Chet Lemon visits Johnny and the Bunch and teaches them a thing or two about shagging flies. They also get a half-hearted lesson in healthy eating, a big dose of baseball history, and of course, the chicken does his thing. Battle of the Network shows. Join Rick Brooks and Mike Kogel as they explore the TV of the 70s and 80s through hand-picked episodes of their favorite and not-so-favorite series.
Welcome to Battle of the Network shows. I'm Mike.
And I'm Rick. Hello, everyone.
We're coming to you from the ballpark today.
Yeah. You can hear the crack of the bat.
That's the
roar
crack of your teeth on Cracker Jacks.
Yes.
Yeah, the roar of the crowd.
The smell of the sweat from the players in the dugout. I don't know.
The San Diego chicken cooking in the heat.
Yeah. The overpriced beer spilling all over you.
Right. What is it? This kid in this thing's peanuts and
yeah,
hot dogs.
Hot dogs. That's ballpark food. Nachos now. Back then, probably not.
Yeah, probably not. Simpler times.
Yeah.
Peanuts, your Cracker Jack, your hot dogs, your beer, and your ice cream.
There you go.
And pop.
Yeah, and pop, yeah.
Kids, of course.
Yeah, it adds up to baseball.
Yeah. And our second return episode for a bunch.
That's right, yeah.
Yes.
I hadn't...
Bunches are now in the two-time club.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the baseball bunch.
We are, yeah. A show I watched a lot as a kid. Quick shout out to my friend, longtime friend Jim. He's in our Facebook group, and I believe he suggested this a while back. And he's a big baseball fan, I know. Unfortunately, he's a Phillies fan, but I don't hold that against him or the fact that he dissed Car 54, Where Are You, one time in a discussion we had. But Jim, thanks for the idea, and hope you enjoy us talking about a show that I watched a lot as a kid, but seems to be very hard to find nowadays. But we watched enough for this episode, though.
And you're wearing, oddly enough, very Phillies-looking baseball bunch T-shirts.
All right, now let me explain here. It's the baseball bunch, like kind of the classic logo, and the colors I think looked baseball bunchish. I must admit that I never liked the Philadelphia Phillies, but boy, those early 1980s Phillies uniforms were pretty sweet. For an era there, the blue and the just good work with your uniforms, Philadelphia.
Yes, you got that right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I watched this a fair amount. I seem to remember it airing at weird times, which seems to be part of the issue they had.
Yeah, it was in first-run syndication. I did read one thing that indicated it was mostly on NBC stations.
Yeah.
That's not what I remember, but it could be. But it would make sense for it to be paired with the Game of the Week, which was NBC would show every Saturday afternoon during the season. They'd have their Game of the Week with like Vin Scully and Joe Garagiola. And I guess maybe a local station might plug this in as a pregame kind of thing.
Right. I remember being, I could be wrong, but like pre-cartoons, like really early.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of think of it as like as a Saturday afternoon thing, but not something that I would watch every week. But if it was on and I was not outside, or something like that, I would maybe check it out. And I think they've shown reruns in some places over the years, but man, I was very frustrated by how hard it is to find like full episodes of this now.
I mean, it's too bad because I imagine most of it holds up, but it's still good advice.
Yeah.
I mean, baseball advice.
Yeah, it's like fundamental baseball. It's a great time capsule to look at like the players. And I think it was Major League Baseball Productions, so they presumably have all the episodes. One thing that might hold up some kind of release might be music rights. They use a lot of like popular music in episodes, so maybe that's what it is. I don't know.
Right. And reading the article you found about it, the Sports Illustrated did, it just reminded, it was like right at the last era of baseball being sort of a little more quaint. Like right before $1 million salaries and stuff, right?
Right.
Who was the first Ozzie Smith? Who was the first person to get like $1 million contract?
I don't think it was Ozzie Smith. Might have been Reggie Jackson, maybe, or I'd have to look that up.
But it's like 81 to 86 or something?
Yes, 81, August of 1980 to the fall of 1985.
So like right before like or leading up to the like Darryl Strawberry, Joy Gooden kind of period. And
then you had 1987, like, was the home run year where everything went crazy. And then you'd have, like, 1988 with the Oakland A's and kind of the steroid era coming in into the 90s and stuff. But I think you could also and I think a lot of people say that, like, aesthetically, baseball was never better than it was in the 1980s. You had, like, lots of different teams winning. The style of play seemed to be a little bit more exciting. It wasn't all like home run strikeout. There was base stealing and fielding and like all kinds of hitting and a big variety of things. So baseball was like really fun to watch in the 1980s too. You know, you had a lot of AstroTurf and maybe not the old school retro style parks as much as you do now. You had a lot of like generic stadiums, but in retrospect, the style of play was actually a little bit fun to watch, even with there were differences. You know, the AstroTurf, it was almost a totally different game than it was like on grass fields, and you had a lot more of that back then.
And every now and then you had a dugout clearing brawl.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I just like that article, you know, people behind the scenes, but players too, talked about how most players didn't have as much national exposure at the time, and
Right.
you know, things like that, where and it was easier to get players and have them interact with regular people, and they you know, would go out to dinner with the people making the thing, and like it would be much harder to do that now.
Yeah, the economic and the cultural gap wasn't so much, and
Yeah, so the gap wasn't as big, and maybe we didn't know as many public things about their behavior, or no, the public didn't know as many things about some of the private behavior.
that's right. There was a little bit more innocence. Now you have like the Pittsburgh drug trials would come up in the early 80s, but it wasn't really probably well known yet at the time the show was on. And really, it was like the link, I'll put a link in the show notes. The article Mike's mentioning is a oral history that Sports Illustrated did several years ago, and it's probably the most comprehensive thing I've ever seen about the making of the Baseball Bunch, and they included the host, Johnny Bench. But the idea was just, you know, have this show for kids, teaching them fundamentals and baseball tips, and get people interested in the game, too. And so it would kind of promote baseball as well as being educational and just kind of a fun little entertainment thing, and a way to kind of get to know these players a little bit more. And the one thing, yeah, so there was the game of the week on Saturdays, and maybe Monday Night Baseball. You'd maybe have your local team, but it wasn't like it is today, where if you get like MLB TV, you can have access to every game. There's baseball on ESPN, you know, TBS and all this. You have multiple options to watch it. Back then, the game of the week was a bigger deal, and it was a lot harder to see. It was a bigger deal to see Pete Rose, even though he was in like a lot of commercials, to see him come on the Baseball Bunch. It's like, oh, okay, it's Pete Rose. It's more of a novelty. You didn't see him every night on TV.
Yeah. Now, thinking about him, or a few of the other people who I saw pictures of who were on it, but just knowing some of their off the field behavior.
Yeah.
Being on a kid's show is amusing.
Yeah. Now, the guy who's the guest on today's show, I thought did an excellent job.
Oh, yeah.
I was very surprised. Well, I shouldn't say surprised, but I was very impressed with how natural and enthusiastic he seems.
Yeah, and I felt like, oh, I learned some things that I can use if I ever play baseball again in my life.
When we get
I
into
mean, some of the things you heard, like, you know, so it's Chet Lemon, who's an outfielder, and talking about, you know, making sure to have both hands there when you catch.
Yeah.
Like that, you know, that's, you know, and kind of need to be told that a lot when you're a kid trying to look cool. And
Right.
because there are a lot of professional outfielders who don't do that.
Yeah. And like Ricky Henderson, who was my favorite, he'd make these like flashy like catches where he'd have one hand out and like kind of snatch it back to his waist after he caught it. But one thing I liked is he says he doesn't just say that you should do it, but he explains why it makes sense. And he did it like in a very good way. And I don't remember, like when I was playing Little League, I remember being told to catch with two hands, but I don't remember getting that good an explanation as
I remember being like that.
Why it makes sense.
Cover the ball, but then he's like also about positioning yourself so you can throw quick.
Yeah, that was
I'm
really-
like, oh, well, I never knew that.
Yeah,
Not that I mean, I just played in the street, but you know, there's everything. You know, that was my old child.
Did you
Just
break any
playing in the
windows?
streets. I don't think so. We used a tennis ball.
Okay,
So
yeah.
not that couldn't break a window, but it was less likely.
I don't know if I've talked. We used to play wiffle ball. Sometimes
Yeah, we
we'd
did
move up to
wiffle
tennis
ball,
ball, but a lot of wiffle ball, and we actually kind of put some dents in some siding. I think, you know, inadvertently. But that was a street wiffle ball. That was the best game of all. Summer nights and wiffle ball, can't beat it.
My brother and I, just like the two of us, played wiffle ball a lot.
Did you have like ghost runners and stuff, or did you bother? Yeah,
Yeah, pretty sure I always lost.
yeah.
Found hitting wiffle ball pretty difficult.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, the bat doesn't weigh enough, and you know, none of it.
Right. Did you now those long yellow skinny bats? The classic wiffle ball. Yeah, those always seemed like a weird shape for
So it's
anything.
either that or like the giant fat ones. Right?
Yeah, the big red ones. You know that you could hit it like, and then you use like the softball size.
Right. Yeah.
Wiffle ball with that sometimes, or if you hit like a regular wiffle ball, you'd split the wiffle ball like and break it like pretty quickly. I think.
Yeah, I think, and we had like a plastic ball at some point that wasn't like it didn't wiffle.
Yeah. Oh.
It was molded to look like a baseball.
Yeah, with like fake stitches on it.
Yeah, yeah.
And, yeah, and it was.
That was a little. I think you could hit that a little farther.
Well, maybe, Mike, if we ever get invited to the podcast softball league,
Yes.
we can get a team going and use some of these skills and tips. Yeah, this episode with Chet Lemon, first, let me mention that there's some videos on YouTube. They almost all have the theme song, the opening and beginning cut out. And I'm assuming it's because of like some kind of music issue, but I can't find the original theme song with the words anywhere. Like you hear it as they're going to break and stuff, and like in the bumpers and stuff or whatever, and throughout the show. But I can't find that theme song. Even an audio file of it, I can't find. And I'm really upset by that because I love the theme song.
There's a clip of the end version, right? Like the instrumental version.
Yeah, I think you can hear the instrumental version, yes, but not the one with the kids actually singing. We've got a hunch you'll love the baseball bunch.
And this even, I guess a little bit of the episode got cut off at the beginning too, right?
Yeah, I think all the episodes I've seen are either have the beginning cut off, and even some of the episode, not just the theme song, and they're truncated. Some of them might be missing segments, so I can't find complete episodes anywhere. But you can definitely get a feel for the show. There's at least I think 9 or 10 episodes, and there's a couple of compilations on hitting and pitching. I think they're taken from home video releases that would take footage from the show and combine them into for home video. But this episode we're going to talk about with Chet Lemon, based on the fact that he was with the White Sox and his uniform, it's got to be 1980 or 1981, I guess. I'm not exactly sure when. But he played in 82, he went to Detroit, and then he went on to be on their 1984 World Series winning team. And 1984, of course, was the year when Punky Brewster, or as Henry would call her,
Punky,
went to Wrigley Field to watch them play
San Diego.
The Padres, yeah. The Padres beat them and went on to lose to the Tigers in the 84 World Series that year. But Chet Lemon was a steady, and I think advanced statistics that we have now, he looks better than maybe even at the time, but he was an all-star a couple times and a very, kind of a solid veteran, you'd call him. Very big part of those Detroit Tiger teams of the 80s.
And definitely they're promoting his fielding skills.
Yeah,
I assume he was a Golden Glover.
I think he was a multiple Gold Glover, and had some pretty good offensive years too.
Definitely a name I remember.
Yeah, well, it's a cool name.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if you get a Chet Lemon baseball card, that's a good thing. We just Chet Lemon.
And I think because he was on that Tigers team.
Yeah.
Which is a period where I was probably paying the most attention.
Yeah, I mean, if you look back at that 84 Tigers, you had Sparky Anderson, Alan Trammell, Lou Whitaker, Lance Parrish, and some of these guys, I guess, were on Magnum PI.
Oh, that's right.
I think Lance Parrish was on a different Strokes, or I think he was on a sitcom, too, and Sparky Anderson had some media appearances, too. So
now, I was rooting for the Padres. I don't know why. I just decided. But my best friend at the time was into the Tigers for some...
Yeah.
Was into the Cubs and then the Tigers in that period. So I think I was into the Padres because I read an article about them in Sports Illustrated at the barbershop.
That's enough. That's a good reason, isn't he?
Remember what was that guy's name? There was one guy they called Peanut because his head looked like it. Not Tony Gwynn and not Greg Nettles and not Goose Gossage. There was that other guy.
Gary Templeton?
No, not Gary Templeton.
Oh, Kurt Bavacqua?
No.
Oh, okay.
It was a Mick something.
Well, we'll look that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who? What baseball player looked like a peanut?
I remember the Tigers being a really big deal, especially that year. But the Padres were kind of more of an enigma. But we've talked about what we watched growing up. But the Pirates were on locally, but really who was on all the time was the Yankees and the Mets. Because the New York stations, they showed a lot of Yankees and Mets games, so I'd watch them a lot. And if the Padres weren't playing one of those teams, you wouldn't see them. I don't think they were real big on the game of the week. The Cubs were on a lot that year.
Yeah, and I mean we saw the Padres play the Braves a lot.
Yeah. See, I didn't get TBS until a little bit later. So in '84, I don't think I would have had TBS yet. And
in fact, they had a big brawl.
Oh yeah, was that with Pascal Perez and that infamous one that went on for
yeah.
for
Greg Nettles was, I think,
across multiple innings and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you don't see that kind of brawling on the baseball bunch, and that's probably a good thing.
No, it's very civil and Johnny Bench. I mean,
yeah, and he's very good on this.
He is. I feel like wasn't his nickname, but he's like Mr. Baseball. As a ambassador of baseball at that time.
I think
he was guy because he was good on TV. And he's got that down home part of him, and he was a good player.
He was on Hee Haw at least once. I think he had some Tonight Show appearances and did some commercials.
Right, yeah.
So, like, the premise on this is that he actually has a team, and he's kind of like their coach. Well, I guess he is their coach, but they really are like a group. I kind of like that concept. That they got these regulars, and he's teaching them lessons and getting them ready for actual games.
He's teaching them baseball. He's teaching them baseball history.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a little bit of, sportsmanship and that kind of thing.
I love the history segments. I mean, and that's the thing. I think the episode starts with like highlights of Chet Lemon, or this clip starts with episodes or highlights of Chet Lemon, mostly like, in the outfield and things. But because it was a Major League Baseball show, they had all this great footage. And again, like This Week in Baseball would be on a lot back then. You could see highlights there, but it wasn't as easy to see highlights back then to see a lot of this stuff, and especially like the historical stuff they would show each week. I love that.
Yeah, that's really cool. And the kids learn lessons about playing.
Yeah.
And it seems like I don't know how much they scripted it, but like the kids are allowed to they make some mistakes so that they can actually get coached a little bit on things like one kid doesn't check for the fence.
Yeah.
And Chet Lemon explains, you need to make sure, you know where you are.
Yeah.
So you don't run into the fence.
He does it in a nice way. He's like, oh, that was good because he made the catch, I guess. But
yeah,
it's like, but you got to watch out because, and they say something about like, he says like different ballparks have different dimensions.
Right, yeah.
Which is kind of a cool thing. And that's one of the best things about baseball. Now, they shot these out in Arizona at like, it's not like a major league stadium or anything. But it's still a good point. They're talking about know your surroundings and everything like that.
Yeah, or later a kid leaves the bag before catches
the ball,
and Johnny Bench says, I could have just thrown it to third and got you out.
Yeah, he calls him out on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be curious if that was something they deliberately put that in there so he could point it out, or if he just, noticed it and stuff. I mean, guys like Johnny Bench, and Johnny Bench he was really one of the best players of all time. I mean, he was an outstanding catcher, no doubter Hall of Famer, and like a really good player. And I got to think like guys like that have been around baseball a lot, veterans, especially a catcher. He knows the game, and it would probably be tough for him to just like tune out and not notice those kind of things.
Right.
He's probably always pointing out like details like that.
Yeah, I'm sure. And especially that is like a catcher thing to know, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's probably a smart catcher is always observing, looking for ways to get people out.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
And we haven't really mentioned the other character. I mean, you got the kids who didn't make any specific impression on me, except for the one that eats a lot.
Yeah, Sam.
There's
a lot of jokes about his eating throughout the series.
He didn't look too big in this.
No, he's a little husky.
But the famous chicken.
Yeah.
A.K.A. the San Diego chicken.
Right.
I was watching him and thinking about that and like, why was he such a big deal? Why was the mascot of a particular team a national figure, possibly as well known as many of the best known baseball players?
I think you're right. Yeah.
And, I kind of looked into one. It doesn't seem like he was 100% officially the mascot of the Padres. Like, I don't, it's very, like it started out as an advertising agency thing. And the guy in the suit just went to the Padres and said, hey, I can do stuff for you if you let me in for free.
Yeah.
It was just a way to see free baseball, and it became this thing. And then he got sued by the advertising company, and he won, but then he had to go buy the famous chicken.
Yeah, a lot messier.
But everyone still calls him the San Diego chicken.
Right.
So I don't know if that's what he had to change, or he had to change some other and then get a new costume. But I mean, as of a few years ago, he was still doing it in his 60s.
It's amazing.
But then I'm watching some of the stuff. Because they showed a reel of him at some point.
Yeah.
And he's doing all sorts of like flips and playing baseball in the chicken suit and doing crazy stuff. I'm like, okay.
Totally physical role.
But I mean, he used to like show up on the Tonight Show and stuff too, right? Real people or whatever, just running around.
He was totally mainstream. Yeah. And he not as famous now as he was then, but yeah, back then he was a really big deal. And
I would argue the only other mascot of a sports team that's made that much of an impression is Gritty. Just because people were making jokes about that for a few weeks.
Yeah, mascots don't have that place in the consciousness as they did back then. But even then, he was like first among mascots.
Yeah,
definitely.
Like locally, they do. Like,
or like if you have like a live animal, like at a college football or something. But as far as people running around in a suit, I mean, I guess he's
like. I mean, the Braves. We had a couple at the same. We had the Bleacher Creature who came. It was at some. It was like an old, like an auto thing, where people bring their old cars.
Mm-hmm.
Like my dad was in the Optimist Club for a while, and they put this on, and the Bleacher Creature was there, and then Chief Nakahoma.
Oh yeah,
and he came to our school at some point.
Yeah,
of course he's a real person.
Right. Yeah, the Philly Fanatic.
Yeah.
The Pittsburgh Parrot. But none of these ones had the mainstream success as the chicken.
Right. And, at least in that oral history, they were all like, they had filmed a pilot without the chicken, and then it was a little flat, and they're like, oh, the chicken made it.
Yeah, and as good as Johnny Bench and the players do at gently correcting the kids and using them as coaching moments, it's easier if the chicken totally does it wrong. You can it's easier to laugh at the chicken because he's like a comic character rather than mocking the kids for doing something like running the bases the wrong way or even slightly less ridiculous mistakes.
Yeah, I think he's functioning. He's functioning like the puppets on Sesame Street do. A little bit.
Yeah.
Like he's the vessel you learn the lesson through.
Right. And he gives them an excuse to really break things down to even a lower level because he's such a cartoonish character. Whereas these kids, they're young, but they all love baseball and they have a pretty good knowledge of it. So you couldn't get too basic unless you have an excuse to sort of explain, well, since the chicken did this, let's point out, this way and everything. So yeah, he is an essential part of the show though.
And I guess at least some seasons, maybe a Kool-Aid Man showed up too.
Yeah, I haven't really come across that, although I remember that being a thing.
Yeah, just when I saw the clip of the end credits, he was there. But
yeah, so apparently Kool-Aid was a big sponsor of the show, and I think the article points out that when they lost Kool-Aid as a sponsor, they couldn't get a national sponsor, and that sort of helped kill the show, in addition to the inconsistent time slots and everything like that.
Right.
Just a combination of things and increased
relatively
expenses.
high cost
Yeah.
for what they were doing.
I mean, I can't imagine the kids were asking for salary increases.
No.
Sam had a most favored nation clause in his contract that he had to be the highest paid.
Yeah, and the players are getting $1,000 to show up, which honestly is that's better than showing up on a talk show.
Yeah. I mean,
I
guess it was still the point where that would be kind of a big deal, but probably still, hopefully they paid transportation and stuff.
Yeah.
And I guess they shot a lot of it in Arizona where they would have
during spring training.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool thing. And one thing I liked about this particular episode is, after they have Chet Lemon and they're kind of talking about outfield a little bit, and they sit down and they have lunch.
Yes.
Just the fact that they're all sitting and having lunch together.
Right. A good healthy lunch, a fried chicken.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's making sure. I like the fact that Johnny's feeding all the kids.
Yeah, but they got the food from somewhere because Sam has chosen his own food. And it's all it's hot dogs and cake and
yeah. I don't know. Sam might have just brought a cooler with him and
right, yeah,
dipping into that all day. But they talk, and even Chet. I was kind of surprised at first that Chet Lemon's sitting down because he's eating lunch with him too, which I thought was cool.
Yeah.
And why not? But he says, yeah, it's you got to treat your body like a machine, and he makes the point that over the course of a 162 game season, you got to eat healthy in order to maintain your energy over the long haul.
Yeah, nice little lesson, and we get before that they had been shagging flies, and then they get a little history about Jackie Robinson. Again, first of all, I think we were talking about this in our PSA episode, but it's intentionally diverse group of kids.
Yeah,
there's some girls, different ethnicities, different ages, I think, or at least sizes.
And I think it's Kate that kind of prompts us by asking, "Do you think a girl will ever play in the major leagues?"
Yeah.
And they give it kind of a well thought out answer. They just say, well, maybe, it's going to take a while, but
right.
Chet Lemon, I think, is do you think you can do it? Then maybe you can, and
yeah.
They don't dismiss it.
No, they don't. In real life, they might have been.
Yeah.
More.
Yeah.
Never.
Well, it's 40 years later and we're nowhere near that happening.
Yeah.
I think there was that show on Fox a couple seasons ago where there was a woman became a major league pitcher. But
that was a fictional.
Yes, it was. Yes.
Speculative fiction. It seems like it would be closer to happening in football or something.
Like a kicker. Well, there's this year there was a college.
In college, yeah.
Yeah, somebody got
there's
some snaps.
Coaches, right?
They're starting to get coaches, and there might be a female NBA coach very soon, it seems like. But yeah, so we're a ways off, but it was interesting. But it prompts a little history lesson with Jackie Robinson, some cool old footage, and talking about his Hall of Fame career, and it was kind of cool. And one thing I like, I don't want to forget because it's one of my favorite parts of the episode, is they kind of saying, well, enough talk, let's go play ball. And Johnny's like, oh, no. So not only haven't you finished your dinner, you want to go out and play baseball, you got to let your food settle a little bit.
Yeah.
I like that kind of, fatherly thing. He wants them to play, but he doesn't want to rush them out in the field to play before, they let their food settle.
I don't need y'all vomiting all over the place.
Yeah.
Listen, because who's going to clean it? It's not going to be the chicken.
Yeah. Yeah, and he does point out, by the way, in case you're wondering, that nothing beats fried chicken unless you're a chicken.
Right, yeah. And we got the chicken montage, and then
By the way,
yeah,
I think that was generic. It wasn't one of those Stars on 45 Star Wars or the disco Star Wars. I think it was imitation. It was generic disco music that was meant to suggest Star Wars, maybe.
oh, I didn't even pay
Okay.
attention. Like there's a
While they're showing
another song later
yes.
that is an actual song.
Yeah, this one I think it's some kind of disco orchestral kind of
Yeah.
combination. I think it's an imitation of the disco Star Wars thing.
Okay.
But I just wanted to point that out because I enjoyed it.
Yeah. And Chet says to the chicken, he wants him to show him how to catch a fly ball, and the chicken pulls a ball with a fly out of his beak, a giant fly.
Yeah.
And then he talks about what we talked about already, the catching with two hands and getting in position to throw, and then there's a whole thing where the kids are trying to run from third to home, and he's throwing them out.
Yeah, and Johnny Bench is there as the catcher. It's a cool little sequence.
Yeah, and I noticed, he's not showboating. He's like throwing bouncers.
Yeah.
He's not trying to throw right into Johnny's glove.
He probably wants to save a little bit, and
yeah.
But it's actually kind of fun to watch the whole segment. I kind of liked it, and there was that little spice of the one kid cheating a little bit and going early, and I did like that too. So.
Yeah, and kids getting some good slides.
Yeah.
In. I think one of them almost. I think maybe the throw was a little long or something.
And then Johnny Bench kind of like says, "Hey, I saved you on that one," and he's kind of joking with Lemon about that.
Right, and then that's it for Chet, and that seems to be the structure of the show. Like that oral history talked about, they would film the stuff with the guest on one day, and then the next day they would do the last bit where Johnny's like he's got a magic chalk teaching him something else. So in this case, he gives everyone all-star ballots, and they get to vote for the all-stars, which is cool. Do they still do that, I wonder?
Yeah, they've jazzed it up over the years. Like there's a fan vote and then a last minute vote and online voting and everything. But this is kind of like when it was old school. Like you had physical ballots that you'd get at
the game,
at the ballpark. Yeah, and then maybe like some participating sponsors they added. You could get it like at Scott's Turf. Scott's would sponsor it, and you'd get it like at the garden store or something like that.
I remember doing that at games.
Yeah, I always had a pet peeve about that. About all-star voting, because in theory you could vote like as soon as the ballots came out, right? But then every year, like around the all-star game, people would be complaining about some player having a bad year getting in, or some player. But it's like, well, how do you expect the voters to vote based on this year when they might be voting as early as like 2 months ago?
Right.
A lot of times people are just voting who they think the best players are in general. That's what I would do. I'd like vote who's the best, not who's having the best year. I mean, that was part of it. Like the managers maybe would add to the team and they'd have, but what I like is like Johnny Bench says, he kind of gets at this when he says like all-star voting philosophy, when he says, if you got some favorites, go ahead and vote for them, but don't get carried away. Which I took it to mean like try to vote for guys that are at least having a good year. If you like Joe Schlabotnik and he's having a bad year, don't put him on. It would be embarrassing.
And a lot of the kids vote for people who showed up on the show, which
that's kind of cool.
That's nice.
That's legitimate. I mean, they're mostly.
I don't know. I mean, Ted Williams that's a stretch at that point. But if anyone could have come out of retirement and played an All-Star game.
Yes, he could have come and gotten a couple of hits, I'll bet.
Yeah.
And we see in the montage of All-Star history, Ted Williams hitting a home run. And
that's right.
I really like that. That was a cool little segment about the history of the All-Star game. And
Johnny, very humble sounding, but, mentions that the National League has won like 16 out of the last 18.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was like a whole thing. Like I remember as a kid that being the storyline every year in the All-Star game. Like, will the American League win? And also another reason baseball was cool in the 80s was that people actually like tried to win and cared about the All-Star game. It was like a really big deal. Again, you get a chance to see people on TV in one night that you wouldn't normally see, all the best players and gathered in one place.
So the voting that the public did was for the starters, right? And then
yes,
then
the managers like usually like the pennant winner from the previous year,
right,
would select and sometimes
every team had two players or could have two players.
Every team had to have one player, one representative,
right?
Yeah. And then eventually they would add things and have like the commissioner's office get involved and pick one or something. I don't know, but the purest of it was the fans picking the starters.
And then we get some words of wisdom, really from the kids first, just about.
Oh, because they're talking about because one of the kids votes for like all of them, right? Like
the bunch,
Rick, Sam, and Kate, and
yeah.
Louie, and
right, yeah.
That's the one kid's ballot, and they're saying like, well, at least we know that they are standing up for their teammates.
Yes, and then we get the words of the day from the Great Wizard.
Yeah, the Dugout Wizard, the mystical figure
who appears on the chalkboard.
Yes, who looks an awful lot like Tommy Lasorda.
Yes, he does. But it's they're good. Stand by your teammates, and you need communication and cooperation. And then there's a montage with a song called "Together," performed by now, I guess we could say, 2-time BOTNS appearances, Angela Lansbury, at least according to my Shazam.
Yes,
from the musical Gypsy.
I'm glad you verified that, because I was wondering, well, isn't the most famous version of this Ethel Merman?
Yes.
But I'm like, this sounds like Angela Lansbury.
I was like thinking it sounded like, it sounded vaguely Ethel Merman, but I wanted to know.
Yeah.
But something was familiar about it.
Yeah. I'll still put the Ethel Merman singing disco on a kid's show for no apparent reason in the playlist, though. Don't worry.
Good.
But, so it was Angela Lansbury. The original recording, I guess, or something.
Yeah, some cast recording, yeah.
But showing like teammates, helping on the field. That was kind of cool.
That's right. Or just kind of being like, having fun in the dugout.
Yeah, like high-fiving each other. I think was there a couple of like things where like a ball would bounce out of one guy's glove and into another, because he would be right there to back him up or something like that. So yeah, but I like how now Tommy Lasorda in the article gets at this, how he can had a reputation for being a phony sometimes, but he loved the cameras. And on this, like the Dugout Wizard, he's so sincere. Yeah. Like, stand by your teammates, and he's just like so emphatic, but he's really takes seriously this mission of imparting words of wisdom to the kids. I like that.
Yeah. And in that article, like the behind the scenes people talk about him being a little bit difficult.
Yeah, I guess
like it took a while for him to get ramped up.
Yeah. So they'd shoot all his scenes like separately.
Yeah.
And then just superimpose him on the board or whatever. But I kind of like that gimmick, actually. I'm a
sucker
for a guy with like that Swami outfit and just calling himself a wizard. I like that.
That was honestly something I misremembered. I remembered him just being on the show, like in his uniform. Maybe he was. Maybe sometimes.
He was. Yeah, maybe he was. I don't know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if. I think there's one
where he's the guest or something,
and he makes a reference to the wizard like looking familiar or something like that.
Oh, okay.
But they did that at least once. But
yeah, or maybe there was something else he did, maybe PSAs or something.
Yeah. Well, he was another kind of larger than life figure, and the Dodgers had a couple of years there in the 80s or early 80s where they were good. So
right.
Yeah, he was another pretty well known. Had to have been one of the most well-known managers, I guess, if not the most of the 80s.
And then kind of, Johnny wraps everything up.
Yeah, I like that. What's the big takeaways, Bunch?
Use 2 hands.
Yeah. Well, Rick had no relation, had know where the fence is. Sam had know your ballparks, and Louis, I think, said, you catch with 2 hands. So he spread it around, and they learned their 3 takeaways. You got the essence of it.
Well, what's the most important?
The most important, you referring to where Johnny says, not everyone... Oh, okay.
Have fun.
Oh, wait, yeah. I was going to say, not everyone can make the all-star team, so go out and have fun.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, it was weird. I just left
I want to get that little,
Yeah, it's a good point.
Very fun.
Not everyone can.
I'm glad he said that. And here's the thing, too, is like watching the kids they're sort of doing drills, essentially, a lot of it, but it really does look fun. I mean, it kind of makes you want to go and play some baseball. You got a couple
major leaguers doing it with
Yeah. I mean, and it's kind of a casual environment. You don't have a lot of overbearing parents yelling at them.
Nope.
And I think the show does a really good job of making baseball look like a fun game to watch, and also for the kids a fun game to play. So it seems like the show is doing everything it sets out to accomplish.
Now, what I remember from doing drills and stuff, especially like in soccer, and where you're standing in kind of a line going, and every once in a while you're goofing off with somebody next to you. If you're the kid who's next to the chicken, you're probably getting in trouble all day long.
Oh yeah.
He's just like,
yeah,
making you laugh and stuff.
Yep. I would not want to be in that position. You're right.
No.
I think you're onto something there. But if you're standing in line next to Chet Lemon, he's an upright citizen. You're probably in good shape.
Yeah.
He's going to be listening and focused.
That's right.
So you want to hang out kind of by him and not by the chicken, I think.
I think so. Yeah. If you're standing in line next to Keith Hernandez.
Say no more.
Yeah. I enjoyed watching this, though.
Yeah, it was a nice trip back, and boy, I'd love for them to put some of these out on home video. Would be great.
Yeah.
But really, really good show. Love that theme song.
I really want to hear it.
Can a theme song be eligible for a baddie if we don't actually listen to it?
That is like
That would have to be.
That's some deep philosophy.
It is. That would be unprecedented feat. But we'll see.
We'll have to look up what Kierkegaard said about that.
I mean, I couldn't even find it seems like there's got to be like a real audio file of it or something. And I think I saw a couple that it would be like the closing theme or the instrumental.
Yeah.
But not like the version with the lyrics. Like, come on, somebody's got to have it.
Right. Archive.org, somebody.
Yeah, I think didn't the SI article kind of reference the fact that you can find it on the internet or something, but that you can't find full episodes. And actually, I think it was last year, the website The Athletic, which is a subscription model sports news site, did a quiz on the baseball bunch, like a 20-question interactive kind of quiz. And I think the guy that put that together was saying, it's tough finding episodes, but I'm sure he was looking at the same episodes that are on there that we were watching, because there were specific things he referenced, like, oh yeah, I saw that one and whatever. So yeah, there's some there's a Willie Stargell episode of Sparky Anderson, Sadahuru O, the Japanese former home run king, is on one episode. So there's a good handful, but there's so many more that they could put up there. I'd love to see some of these other players in their full appearances. The Ted Williams episode is pretty cool.
I looked up. I didn't know what they're talking about. They made a model of something.
Oh yeah,
the strike zone thing or whatever. Looked at it, found a picture of because that ended up in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's really cool looking. They put it together, and I guess Ted Williams was really thought it was cool. Yeah, and was delighted that they put that together.
That's a win right there.
Yeah, if you can get Ted Williams in a good mood.
Right.
But on the show, because I did watch that one too, and seems really good with the kids, and it seemed like he loved talking with hitting with anybody, and he was there and committed to it, and hey, good for him.
It's fun. Maybe we've talked about this, but I've thought about that with certain sports. Like once you're done, and baseball is one of these. Like once you retire, you don't really get to do it anymore. I mean, you just don't go out and play baseball.
No, you could maybe go to a batting cage.
Maybe,
would be
yeah.
But that's not
right.
not the same.
Like a golfer. I mean, besides the fact that they go on the senior tour, but they can go just golf.
Yeah, tennis,
basketball, sort of.
Right.
I mean, you can shoot baskets. Football, forget it. You're not.
Yeah.
Like you're some lineman, you're just gonna go block.
One of the best sports of all, the dunk tank. You can pretty much do that. Long after you retire, you can still do dunk tank.
Yeah.
So.
But like fighters, I mean, I guess they could work out at the gym.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing. It probably got to be tough.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's why so many. Well, I guess some of them. It's tough to be that close to the game, but you'd see players go into you can coach or whatever and stick around the game that way just because they like being around it and just hitting ground balls to the guys and stuff and being in just being part of the team.
Well, this was fun, and it does make me a little nostalgic for baseball.
Yeah.
Not enough to pay for MLB TV or
anything,
but
it makes me nostalgic. Stuff like this makes me nostalgic to watch old games on YouTube from from this era, or the TV channels that I grew up watching that had the baseball on. But yeah, it was a different game back then, a little faster paced too. But definitely had a lot of fun revisiting Baseball Bunch. So shout out again to Jim, thanks. And am I actually going to do this? Yes, I'm going to do it. If you'd like to join our bunch, you can hit us up at our Facebook page, right, Mike?
Yes.
We've got our Battle of the Network Shows Facebook page, and through there you can access our group, and we'd love talking TV from the 70s and 80s. We've got a lot of interesting conversations on there lately, so come join us, and we'd love to have you. Or email us at mailbag@battleofthenetworkshows.com if you'd like to send us a question or a comment or a show suggestion that way.
And if you'd like a baseball-style shirt with our mascot Rewind Stubbs on it.
Yeah, I would like one of those. Where can I get one?
You can get one at TeePublic.
Okay.
Go there and then search for our store, which is called Battle of the Network Shows. You should be able to get one unless weird things are happening.
Yeah.
Many styles of shirts and other items.
That's right. And unlike the Baseball Bunch, when it was on, you can find us every Thursday with our new episodes. We're right in the middle of our 9th season, and we got a lot more to come, so stick with us. And yeah, come along and join us and play ball and have fun.
That's right. Most of all, have fun.
This episode brought to you by Chet Lemonade. You can catch more flies with Chet Lemonade than vinegar. New from Kool-Aid. This episode also brought to you by Teamwork. This episode also brought to you by The Chicken. So wacky. Join us next time for another exciting episode of Battle of the Network Shows. Learn more, leave feedback, and suggest future episodes at battleofthenetworkshows.com. Follow us on Twitter at BatNetShows and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Battle of the Network Shows.